Recording started. Yeah, we're live.
And we're away. Good evening, good morning, good night, whatever time or time zone you care to join us. Welcome to this week's live edition of the Mauls, Balls and All broadcast, brought to you from us here in Irish Rugby Banter. The broadcast where anything can be said, will be said, and usually ends up being said or being done.
No.
Joining us this week from one of our regular panelists here, who's always on talking rugby from his home in Glasgow, Munster's man away, Mike Reedy. And we also have a special guest who's been on with us previously, Mr. Brett Igo. Brett is a fairly well documented and well known lecturer and coach in the area with Leinster Rugby, and a sports analyst and coach with Southeastern Technical Union, and does a bit of online content with the Currency as well. I think I've covered pretty much everything there, Brett. Am I right?
I think so, yeah. I think you're on the ball.
Excellent stuff.
Yeah.
Excellent stuff. Folks, we've got a fair bit on the agenda this evening, so we'll rattle along. We won't delay too much. I suppose just starting off, really, what is in the news this week. That news broke yesterday that Simon Zebo has announced his retirement from our 15-man game. Everybody knows who Simon Zebo is. At the stage with it from his long and I suppose colourful career with Munster and with his spell with Racing in France, and he's back with Munster again. This season he's just announced is going to be his last. Brett, your thoughts on the career and of Mr. Zebo?
Yeah, it's been colourful, hasn't it? It's been a pretty roller coaster sort of career for him. I think his decision, like firstly, he's playing unbelievable rugby at the moment, and I find it bizarre that they couldn't find another year for him somewhere along it. But maybe he just had enough, and he wanted to move on. But he's certainly a character. He's certainly someone that the fans come to watch. He's hugely exciting what he does. I don't know whether the Racing thing was a good move for him for his international career. Obviously, he moved on, wasn't getting really looked in the shop window. It was Joe the coach back then? I think he was. And on an international front, he hasn't kind of recovered from that. I actually thought he would have sneaked in to one or two squads over the years since he came back, but yeah, it wasn't to be. But he's certainly been a great player to watch over the years.
So you're saying that now, just to put you on the spot, Brett, would you pick him for fifth? Would you put him in your team now?
Well, I'm looking at if you look at fullback, and we've got Hugo Keenan, it's obviously miles in front of probably most fullbacks around. Who's the second choice? Who's going in there? You know, I know we're going to talk about Hugo and going off to sevens, which is a great opportunity for him. But who I actually driving home when I heard the Hugo news, and I was going, who play 15 in South Africa?
Fucking, that's
it's going to be a big concern. And I'm not saying Zebo is the man that should have done it, but you know, I think I'd prefer someone that knows the position, understands the position, and who has that much experience that is knocking around. Then maybe they're going to just rejig and put one of the wingers back there, maybe Hansen or someone like that, or James Lowe, or are they going to go with Jimmy O'Brien? So it's like the jury's out. So ask me, would I pick him? Yeah, for 2 games down in South Africa, yeah, I probably would have.
Sure. I suppose his age profile has probably gone against him insofar as he's the wrong age, you know, and we're always looking ahead, or we're supposed to be looking ahead towards the next World Cup and so on. So perhaps that's gone against him. Mike Reedy, as a Munster fan, your memories and how much will you miss him?
Do you know something? Prior to this year, I thought last season he was awful. I thought he needs to go now. He needs to retire, and he's completely changed he's completely changed everything. I'm glad he has, to be honest with you, that he's gone out on a high and that he's gone out with people having good memories of him playing. Like, not everybody remembers maybe his first stint. Our younger supporters won't remember his first stint with Munster or all of it anyway. And he was a very, very talented, a maverick player, that. And I think the game does need players of that ilk. I know the much maligned Finn Russell in our group even here he's a kind of a similar type player. I remember back to when David Campese first came on into the fold, to play for Australia, and everybody thought, who's this fucking crazy guy? But even going back to further back than that, like to Gareth Edwards and Phil Bennett and players like that, everybody, like, it was a different game back then. But I think the game needs characters like he wasn't endeared by Leinster fans because he was very vocal, almost anti-Leinster, which is not helpful in my opinion, when it comes to the big picture. And he also didn't fit into the structured game that Joe Schmidt endorsed. He certainly that maverick style wasn't suited to Joe's philosophy on structured rugby. So I don't think he was ever going to be a success there. So that maybe have been a contributing factor to him going abroad to play. And you know what? He's had a decent career. He's scored 70 or plus tries for Munster in his time, and like I wouldn't. I'll be honest with you. I wouldn't have taken him to South Africa, even though even though I'm a Munster man. I wouldn't have taken him purely because I don't think it's a forward step for Irish rugby. I think we need to be producing somebody new, and I have earmarked somebody who you'll know, Brett, quite well, I imagine. Young Henry McIlrain or what's his name, McErlin, or whatever his name.
McErlin, yeah.
I have great memories of that 20s World Cup, by the way, and I thought he's an outstanding player and a player in the same kind of player mode as Hugo Keenan is miles ahead of anybody else at full back in the world. He proved that even just at the weekend there, how good he is and how badly he was missed. So it would be nice to, like, it's almost as if our hand has been forced once again, and if that's what it's going to take, like, for us to bring in another player, like, in that position, then that's what it's going to take, But as far as Simon Zebo, I wouldn't have taken him. I wouldn't have brought him back into the Irish fold, purely because we need to move forward.
Okay. Strong opinions there from a Munster man. I just see here we've a couple of comments coming up here on the screen. We encourage Brett, audience participation if you like, and we have a couple of we have comments and questions viewers. Gregor Galway, who's an Ulster fan, has basically said Frawley would be the next man in, perhaps at 15. He's got a bit of game time at 15. He's probably not your favorite, Brett, for 15, but and he's certainly not mine or anyone else's. I think any of us here. But he ticks so many of the boxes that you need as a fullback, though, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. I just worry about that going up at that level. The pace, I think, is probably a big thing. I think he's been exposed a few times. Look, he's very, very talented. So don't get me wrong. He's a talented player. Just at the international level, I just worry about how quick he actually is.
Sure.
Yeah, he's definitely, he'd been my 23.
Fair enough. I suppose, and then look, we'll just move on then to the news then. Mike, yeah?
Yeah, okay, on we go.
All right, okay. No, and sure, look, we'll move on then to the news that's pretty much fresh off the press today, that Hugo Keenan is going with the Ireland Sevens, chasing that goal, following Dupont's lead. He'll miss part of the end of the season, so my guess is, not looking at fixtures and so on, but he'll miss perhaps the final, the final, and perhaps the semi-final, or the very final stages of the URC. He's available for Saturday, obviously, but we know he's got we've heard Stuart Lancaster previously talking about this top end speed that he has, that he's able to basically run flat out for for minutes on end without a break. So he's obviously got that superb stamina there. How long do you think, Brett? And I suppose maybe this is not it's probably a strength and conditioning question, but how long will it take him, do you think, in your estimation, for him to get up to speed, pardon the pun, with the whole 17? Because obviously it is a different version of our game.
He won't take that long because he's very quick anyway. His position, he has to cover every blade of grass in the current position he is at 15. He's got a really low body fat already, so he wasn't like, if you see Dupont he's actually had to strip himself down a bit, and he's actually looking a lot sharper than he did, say, when he was playing in the World Cup. I know there's definitely been a good 3-4% body fat being stripped off him. Hugo doesn't need to do that. He could walk in at any stage and be able to do this. He's got no problem doing it.
Right. Wow. That's you're going into detail there now that many of us wouldn't really kind of know a whole lot about. Just on the tactical side of it as well, I suppose there's look, he just goes through the motions with whatever shape and tactics that they come up with. But I suppose you've covered off on the physiological side and the fitness side, but there's obviously a significant change though when you're going, and there's only six others on the pitch. It's like, would he play the full back position in sevens, or could he even be, as like Andrew Smith did for Connacht, he was down as a forward? Does it really make a difference, or?
I think he'd be one of those outside backs for sure. Like he'll have played it before. Like obviously he'll have coaches, and it's gone up a higher level as well. So he's got a bit of adjustment to do when it comes to that tactical side of the game. But technically he should be okay. Fitness wise, there won't be a problem there at all. Sure. Look, all these athletes, like Olympic athletes, like looking at whether the hockey team today, whether it be the swimmers trying to qualify yesterday or whatever it is, it's an incredible achievement to be an Olympic athlete. So I can see why he fancied doing it. I see why he's decided to do it. On a pure selfish front, I wonder how Andy Farrell feels. He's got to go to South Africa now without his number one choice fullback. He is a world-class player, as we've talked about. Who fills that position will be interesting. Who misses out on being an Olympian is the other question.
That is, yeah. And I suppose, like, it's just interesting you mentioned about Andy Farrell from those above to partake.
Surely Andy Farrell would have to sanction
an event.
Would Andy Farrell not have to sanction such a move?
I would have thought it would have come across his desk. That's why I'm a bit shocked he's actually gone. But no, obviously saying that, look, it's an opportunity to find another 15. Like that's the way I see it now as well. Like, I mean, we need to do that sometimes, and our hand has been forced now, so we have to do it. So fair enough. If that's what it takes, that's what it takes. But I think he'll change into that seamlessly. By the way, he'll into the sevens, because he's obviously played it before and he's experienced there, and that's it's helped his 15s game playing sevens has, because he like Brett just said, he covers every blade of grass across the back pitch, and the way he reads the game is incredible, and he's fantastic pace. He has every aspect that you need in a top class player. As far as I'm concerned, he's miles ahead of any other 15 in the world. I don't care, or Ramos, any of them. I think he's. In fact, the only player I would say that comes anywhere close, and it doesn't have the same pace, is probably Blair Kinghorn, who we might see at the weekend.
He's a very, very good player. He doesn't have all the tools though that Hugo Keenan has. He's one of the best tacklers I've ever seen. Hugo Keenan is. Saw his tackle again on Mike Lowry at the weekend, by the way, and it's fucking incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we're very lucky to have such a talent. The other news we heard today, and this is a topic that has, I suppose, since Leinster announced they've got RG Snyman and now Geordie Barrett coming, is the funding of the provinces, how they can able to, sign players, go in for some players, and how Leinster have kind of managed to somehow get that upper edge on the Stardust and the Stars and sport. Of course, the news being that the RFU have reviewed their funding model of the provinces, and the result is that 30% of all funding of central contracts comes from the province's own coffers. Brett, again, your thoughts on this? I think it's fair to say Leinster are probably going to feel this a bit keener than the others, perhaps, with them holding the bulk of the central contracts.
Yeah, I thought it up when we said we were going to discuss this. I actually went and to find any detail on it, and the detail in pure IRFU media releases is very sketchy. So it said that there was going to be 40 million and 30% would go back. So I was thinking 10 central contracts at, say, conservatively 300k. We're into the 3 million mark. Leinster now have to pay 10 of those 30% of those contracts back to the IRFU. So you're looking at just short of €1 million that Leinster will have to find if I have done the maths right. That's a substantial amount of money for any province to find. It doesn't matter who they are. You can, like, that's a full quarter-final gate receipt. That's what that is. What happens? Do you have to trim your squads? I'm actually looking at it on the level down. Do you have to trim other parts of your business? Do you have to trim academy staff? Do you have to, where does it go with that? Because that money is hard found. It is hard to find just short of $1 million for any of the provinces. So the players are still they might not be centrally contracted, but all the money is coming from the IRFU. I think it said 80% of what we actually bring in comes from one team. That's it, which is our senior team. So you're kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul a bit on this. It's not as though, but maybe your players might be cut from a 46-man squad. You might be told to go down to 42 or 44 or something, but yeah, that's the initial way I was looking at it. But 40 mil into running our pro teams, still a huge amount of money on any level.
Yeah. It's funny, that like I just said, there's been a little bit of, I suppose, there has been others I've seen on social media today who've kind of tried to delve a little bit deeper, and it's literally just a press release. There's nothing under the bonnet to explain where this is going from. And of course, there's obviously the usual skepticism that it's just window dressing and it's just, to try, it's a PR exercise and so on. But it'll be, I suppose, look, it just seems coincidental. You could say, the skeptic in me is just thinking, well, where Leinster playing their games next year, they're going to be playing in Croke Park, and the Aviva. So, getting great receipts in is as you just said, is the quarter final. If there's another Champions Cup big game, or even if they decide to put one of the URC, the Interpro against Munster for argument's sake in Croker, and they sell it out, it's very clever management, financial management there. Mike, your thoughts on
I'm interested in the figures that Brett has generated, but I wouldn't have the nous to be to break that down now. But absolutely, it's going to hit Leinster definitely because of 10 central contracts as against one for each of the other provinces. So it's a tenfold blow to them basically, and might even up probably might appease the other provinces if anything. I don't know whether it will or not though, because I mean, is that extra million would probably pay the contract of Snyman and Jordy Barrett next season? So maybe that's where the cuts should come. And in my opinion, that's where the cuts should come in anyway. But that's just I have a fairly strong opinion about that, about whether they should be there or not. You know, it's going to be interesting to see where it does. But I agree, Peter, what you just said there regarding the venues for next season's games for Leinster being either Lansdowne Road or Croke Park. So you'd like to think that the size of the venue would like dictate that there's going to be more supporters there, so generate more money. So it's probably going to cost. You're obviously going to have to shell out then though for the rental of those stadia as well. So they might balance each other out, you know. We'll have to see how it pans out. I don't know. Like I don't look too much into the finances of any of these organizations. I just want to see good.
That's because they don't tell you what they are. They're all real general terms. So I don't think we'll ever find out whether this is beneficial or not for any province or how much it's costing. We're not going to get any of those figures.
Well, I don't see how it can be beneficial to any of the provinces. Basically, they're telling all the provinces, you need to cough up some of the dough for these players that we've been paying the full amount for all the time. So basically now you got to pay 30% of that. So it's going to hit everybody. And
I suppose it's good. Like the fact that Barrett is only for 6 months, and I think Snyman's on is something like a pay-as-you-play contract. So it will be interesting going forward. Like, you know, there won't be too many. I would say that it's going to be, as you said, Brett. You know, there could be more of an emphasis on academy players. So that'll obviously, you know, it'll be cheaper to obviously to have guys on academy contracts than perhaps, you know, full contracts guys who are older, and so the age profile will probably drop a little bit more. The squad's not that they're particularly old probably at the moment anyway, but no, for absolute sure it's going to be it'll be interesting times ahead. And of course it said that it's going to be reviewed annually, so you know it'll certainly be a case of suck it and see. We've seen it already from Connacht. They seem to have released more players than they have coming in, so that's perhaps this is a portent of things to come.
Same with us, isn't it?
And the same with Munster as well. But look, we'll move. I was just going to start moving on towards the URC games from last weekend. If that's okay. We have the first game that was up was Edinburgh versus Munster. Munster playing there in the Hive Stadium. A very, very hostile crowd seemed to be there against Munster. And if I'm not wrong, I think there's always been a bit of history there between Munster and Edinburgh. The game finished controversially, with a win to Munster. Brett, did you see the game and what did you think?
I did, yeah. Yeah, look, Edinburgh it's such a tough place to play. Like I think they've only lost once or maybe twice. I think that was the second time they've lost this season. It's really tough to play there. I have to say, Munster have been absolutely brilliant the last few weeks. And I don't know whether it's by design, but I'm just thinking of in terms of the fitness and the fitness coaches that are working with those players. They have seemed to have been able to get these players in peak condition in the back end of last year, and now they're doing the same again the back end of this year. And I think that is a massive key part of Munster's success in last year's URC, and I think it will be a huge benefit to them if they go on and win this again. And there's no reason why they can't. Now, saying that, the players, the coaches have been picking a pretty consistent side. They have their big game players playing all the time. They are playing an absolute fantastic brand of rugby. Their defense is so much better than it was 12 months ago, which is frightening for the teams that are left in the competition. They just seem it's another year under Dennis Leamy. It's another year together. I think there's parts of their game that, like, even if I go look back at Munster teams in the past, like 10, 15 years ago, they weren't playing as attractive as this group is now playing. It's like as though they've modernized with a Munster twist, but fitness-wise, like, they're all over teams. Now, that it was a tough game, and I know it came down to only win it by a few points, but that's an impressive performance, really impressive.
Yeah. Mike, as the only panelist on here, regular panelist on here, and as a Munster fan, what did you, I take it you saw the game? So what do you think?
I saw it. Yeah, I was really impressed with Munster as well. I think this is 4 weeks in a row now that they've won away. Like, I think it's one home game and 3 away games, and in fact they've won 7. They've won 8 their last 8 games. 7 of those with bonus points. Now they were very impressive. Frisch got 2. His first try was a little bit of genius almost. And the hostile crowd that you spoke about, Peter, it's nauseating for me to hear like supporters booing in any stadium, and it's something that's crept in, and it's very apparent in Scotland, to be honest with you, and it's even in the international team now, and it's something that needs to be fucking done away with. It's awful. You can't. I mean, the difference, and it's happening elsewhere now as well. It happens in France as well. You know, this booing.
Mm-hmm.
That's football. That's football kind of mentality. You know, it's never been in the rugby. And but Munster, I thought Crowley had an absolutely outstanding game again at 10. Took his try well, and they got the other try through push over. I think, wasn't it? Can't remember who scored it now, but what was, I can't remember now. I've lost that train of thought. I mean, Edinburgh came back into the game and put it up to them, but Munster were the better team and deserved to win the game. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And I do agree with Brett. I think they have the business end of the season once again. They've seemed to have hit their straps, you know, and hopefully they can thinking from a Munster perspective and an Irish perspective as well, that they can keep it going right to the end. I mean, I would like to think that 2 Irish teams could end up in the final of this URC. And I think that would be an ideal scenario, and played at Croke Park. There we go. I'm making the plans for it already.
Yeah,
someday, all right.
Indeed, it'll be a hell of a day out in June. Hopefully, we'll get the weather for it as well. Just on that, there was a try that was awarded, Brett, to Edinburgh. That try that they had. It was a pushover. I think it was their hooker, the replacement hooker got it.
Yeah.
Can you explain? I certainly couldn't understand what was going on. I think there's an actual law that wasn't followed by the referee, where if it's carried in and there's no clear grounding, it has to go to, it's an attacking put in. It's a put into the defending team? Is that, no, sorry, an attacking put in, but it's a 5 meter scrum. Can you bring us through if your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Firstly, like, I didn't think it was a try, only because I can't see the ball grounded. The TMO is adamant he saw it. Look, it'll sound a bit harsh to the TMO. I think he's mixed up. The end of the ball is the same color as is it a sweatband one of the players is wearing? And that's what it looked like to me, that he seems to have got all mixed up into what these sweatbands were. And I just think he's judging something's hit the ground, which isn't actually the ball, because the ball, if we go with his logic, the ball is going to be about 2.5 feet long, and it clearly isn't. And yeah, I just thought, I think he's got it wrong. I think he got mixed up there, but he was absolutely 100% adamant that was the tip of the ball. And even the ref was a bit, not too sure about this one. In terms of, if it's an unusable ball, it would go to an attacking 5 meter scrum, but I don't think that's the case. I think it would have been just held up. I don't think. Sure. I did see that on social media somewhere, but I think that's just a 22. It's a 22 goal line, it's a goal line dropout. For me, that's what it was.
Do you think there was any kind of a case for trying to appease Scottish fans, given what happened against France in the Six Nations. They thought, Jesus, we can't do this to them again.
God, but yeah, you could have been down to that. You know, I don't know who was the TMO. Was it an Italian TMO?
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, I think he
Yeah.
was.
He clearly got very, very mixed up in what he was looking at.
Yeah,
But-
I personally thought like the referee was actually there. He was trying to get himself. I think your man Necchi is the Italian referee. I thought he's not a bad referee.
Yeah.
But I just couldn't understand if he's closer to the action.
Yeah.
And he's there trying to go down on his knees, trying to even almost get pull players out of the way to see. If he can't see it, why are we going to a TMO?
Yeah.
With a further angle? I personally just couldn't understand that. Look, at the end of the day, it was a fantastic win for Munster. They just seem to keep doing it. Like we've seen, I suppose, one of the last times we'll see one of the best second row partnerships, I would argue, in world rugby with Snyman and Byrne in harness. Absolute, like what team wouldn't kill to have such a combination in place? But anyway, then the second game that I suppose of interest for ourselves was Connacht versus Stormers in the Dexcom Stadium. Connacht were saying goodbye and farewell to a number of players like Tiernan O'Halloran and a number of squad members at that game. It was an awful lot tighter than I think an awful lot of people thought, because we discussed it last week on here, Brett, and we're kind of saying, Jesus, thoughts and prayers for Connacht, because Stormers had all of a sudden, after an absolute woeful start to the season, had managed to get their crap together, and we thought it was going to be a massacre. But 12-16 didn't really kind of reflect how tight it was. What did you think of it?
Yeah, look, I kind of feel sorry for Connacht, really, because if they don't have their top 15 on the pitch, I think they do struggle, and I think that's what you're now beginning to see. I think they need those X-factor players like Hansen and stuff, but they just don't have them anymore. And I think the layer underneath are a struggle. And I think when you come against quality opposition, like the Stormers, I think that's where you're going to be found wanting. Saying that, the lads on the pitch, they dug in, showed a bit of resilience in what they were trying to do. But I just have... looking at Connacht, I think they look like a team that's in the first year of that coaching group, and I think they need a bit of time to develop. The problem is now is they're going to go through a big cycle of player out, player in, and then you're going to have to start the whole project again. I think they should get people on 2-year contracts and just leave them there and go from there. My worry for them is that the players they're recruiting are not as good as the players that are leaving. And it's like, just because they played in Leinster or got a cap for Leinster doesn't mean they're absolutely brilliant. And if the other provinces are happy enough to see the back of some of those players, you'd have to ask questions why. I would like Connacht to go and start finding their own way and finding what suits them and what suits their brand. I've always said that Connacht are a bit like the Brumbies were years ago. They were the outcasts of the Australian Union, and they created their own culture under McQueen, and they evolved into something that's actually quite good. Probably not as good. It's certainly not as good as it was back then as it is now. But yeah, I just think Connacht, where are they going? Like how far can they go on this? They're going to be outside of Europe. They're not going to qualify. They'll go into the Champions Cup, trying to sell a new stadium. It is tough. It's really, really tough for them.
Sticky question for you, and I've spoken to, I know, a couple of Connacht supporters. James, who's a regular on here, panelist on here with ourselves, as one, and there seems to be a lack of faith in Wilkins. Like he's been there, he was kind of, I suppose, part of the boot room or whatever, and he came up behind Friend. We know that he's got a strong reputation, or we've heard he's a strong reputation, because there was glowing reports from his time when Farrell brought him to New Zealand. But do you think perhaps is he maybe too much of a nice guy, that he doesn't have the streak perhaps to kick backsides if they need to be kicked?
I don't know what to do here now.
Yeah, look, I don't
We can
know.
do anything.
Look, I don't know him personally. I don't know. I don't know too much about him, but I'm only looking at the performances on the pitch, and they've definitely gone backwards under his watch.
No.
But I think we need to be fair to him. I don't think a coach can do a 12-month gig and they can be all singing, all dancing. I think we see this in loads of different sports. I think they need to be given huge opportunities.
I don't know if you can see me, Peter Burke, but I've been frozen out, I think, here or something anyway, so I can't.
We can hear you and see
what's going on.
Mr. Reedy. So just
maybe you can do something about it.
You can still participate anyway. No, I just see there's a comment there from Peter Burke, funnily enough. One of Connacht's worst performance of the season, defensive more with holes and Swiss cheese, too much pitch on display between 9 to 15. Does it take a season perhaps maybe for a new defensive system to bed in, Brett? Because we know Scott Fardy has come in, like, we know as a player and so on, the type of player, uncompromising, hard Australian player. It takes longer than a season for a new system to come in.
Yeah, look, it does take time, but like what we're not privy to is how good he actually is. And by the way, he could be the new Andy Farrell for all that we know, but maybe he's not, and maybe we've just taken a punt because he's a great player, and we've just decided, you know what, fantastic player, and he was. We all recognize that, and just go, you know what, he's suited to coach, and sure, we'll throw him in. It's a completely different job. It's a completely different skill set. Like I can tell a story of an All Black I worked with who arrived in the door at 10:20 for a training session at 10:30. And he just looked at me and he was like looking at us going, what time did you guys arrive at? And go, we were here since 6:30. And it's just a whole new life. And we don't know about Fardy. We're not privy, but what we are watching is we're watching performances on the field, and they haven't been as good as they have been. And that's going to be Connacht. That's the battle for that new coaching staff. But I would beg the people that run Connacht Rugby to give them a chance to see where they go. I wouldn't be start making sweeping changes just yet. They have missed. For me, their top player is Hansen. He sparks them, and he hasn't played in a long, long time. So I think we need to get him back on the pitch.
Yeah. Just on speaking of X-rated player, X-factor players and so on, we've also, there's a strong rumor, and depending on who you're reading or listening to, Keane Prendergast could be making his way west to join his brother. Sam Prendergast is going to join Keane. Do you think that would benefit him playing behind perhaps not such
well, if he can see and hear me, that's fine, but
strong
I can't hear anybody or see anybody, so I don't know what's going on here.
No worries, Mike.
I'm on screen. No, I'm not on my screen. let me log out and I'll try and come back in, Peter, because I can't see anything anyway.
All right, good man, Mike. You come in if you can. Anyway,
yeah, look, that's a great question. Look, players have to play. They need minutes. They need minutes on the pitch. And for me, wherever he can get the minutes, that's where he has to be. I still think he's played. I don't know where I had it written down. He's played 14, maybe 15 games so far this season for Leinster. He's getting minutes. I think he's played 300 or 400 minutes already. For me, I think he should stay in Leinster and battle it out and start overtaking Harry Byrne, and with an eye on Ross Byrne. I would also say he needs to wait another few weeks to see how the season pans out. If Leinster don't win a Heineken Cup at the weekend and Ross Byrne doesn't set the world alight, I think then the coaching staff will start probing a few questions to see, you know what, maybe we need to move Ross on, and maybe we need to bring the next generation through. But if Ross goes out and plays like Johnny Sexton at the weekend and wins a Heineken Cup, Sam's going to have a little think and say, right, he's here for another 2-3 years, and I'm going to have to bide my time. And look, I've been going on about loans to Pro D2 into the top 14 to the English Premiership for Irish players is actually a good way to do it. If we could loan people out for 6 months and for 12 months, brilliant. We need our players with minutes. They have to play the game. We can't. They can't go into a gym and just lift weights for their whole professional career. It's just not. It's not good. It's not good for Irish rugby.
Yeah, someone else, I think an ex-professional said something like that. They don't want to play, they don't want to lift weights, and just echoing what your comments. There's a contributor there says Joe Lyons would be a disaster and too much of a punt putting Sam to Connacht. He's better staying in Leinster, getting 5-10 games with 5 starts rather than heading to Connacht. So that's
from my perspective on this. I think it would be a disastrous move for both Sam Prendergast and for Leinster, because he is the future. Well, I'd like to think he's the future, lads. I don't know if we're building this boy up now. He looks the real deal, but we haven't seen enough of that yet. He has to fill out. But I think to be more beneficial for him to stay at Leinster and play alongside Gibson Park and Gary Ringrose and Henshaw than to go. I think he could set his career back by going to anywhere else, to be honest. Look at Joey Carberry since he's gone to Munster. He's way a bit. Now, when he looks as if he's kind of getting back in a bit, but Sam Prendergast looks to be the future, and Harry Byrne is certainly not the future. I'm going to say it. I've been very vocal about this. He's not the future for it. He's not good enough to be playing as a 10 for Leinster rugby. It's as simple as that. Leinster are miles ahead of his abilities.
It's interesting. Sorry,
Brett, go on.
I was looking at the minutes played for 20-year-olds. I put up a tweet there this evening. And if you look at Sam's 20 years of age, this is his 14th, 15th game for Leinster he's played so far this season. I know a good few of them have been off the bench. I think he's only got 3 or 4 starts. Jack Crowley, at the exact same age, only had 4 games.
Yeah,
these players need to play games. Jack Crowley benefited greatly from that tour down to South Africa. He benefited greatly. Then he put himself in the shop window, and his career has rocketed. I actually think he's playing better now than he even did in the Six Nations. But these players need to play games. They have to play the game.
Well, I tell you, we seem to be frightened in Irish rugby to play these guys. We have this obsession that they need to be a certain age. If they're good enough, they're old enough.
Yes.
And Antomac has 50 caps for France. And given that he didn't play in the World Cup or the last Six Nations through injury, how many more would he have? So, or is it 50? No, I think he has 40 caps. He would have 50 if he played. He's 24 years of age. He's the same age as Jack Crowley. How many caps has Jack Crowley? 50, 12, 15, or maybe less even for Ireland. And Dupont as well. Dupont has played 59 caps or 59 times or something for France. And he missed the Six Nations. So we need to get this thing out of our heads about these players not being old enough, and they need to develop. The only place they will develop, like Brett just said, is by playing games. Fucking this gym is never. Rugby has never been about the gym.
Just Brett, I want to bring up we're speaking just on the subject that I have, and we won't dwell on it too much longer because we've more to talk about. But a point being raised as Peter Burke has raised a question as well. Charlie Tector is almost a forgotten man with Leinster.
Yeah.
This guy was another who came through the under-20s, very good looking player, good kicker. What's happening with Tector? Is he injured, or is it his face doesn't fit? Or
look, I know he went down to play those 2 games down in South Africa. He's been playing a lot of AIL for Lansdowne. I don't know. I think he's a very talented kid. I know he's probably 22 now. Look, he's got serious talent, and I'm kind of shocked that the likes of Ulster and Connacht never jumped in for him. Because he is that much older, he's a bigger player, more physical than Sam Prendergast is. I'm kind of shocked they haven't decided to look at him. Because he is. I think again, if you give this player some time and minutes, look, he's young players. They're going to make mistakes. They're not going to be Johnny Sexton. But if you understand that and you allow that to happen and you let them play, I think Charlie's got huge potential, absolutely huge potential. Why worry about someone like Charlie? Is I don't know whether if he's down the pecking order, he might move on to another club. We're all now looking at what's his name in Edinburgh?
Ben Healy.
Well, Ben Healy, going, who let that player go? Like, it was a stupid thing for it to happen. Like, he's from Tipperary. Like, he's an Irishman. He's a Munster man.
The same
Like, he should be playing in his own province.
Same town as me.
Yeah. But who allowed this to happen? And that's why I'd hate to see someone like Tector going like that, because he is as talented in that. Like, he's by right in that category.
Sure.
Lads, I mean, you're both Leinster men. As far as I'm going to be honest, I honestly don't think Rossbourne is good enough to be a 10 for Leinster either. I really genuinely don't. And I have nothing against the boy. I really hope he has the game of his life Saturday and influences Leinster winning that final. But Leinster are a better team than either of the Burns. It's as simple as that. And I think Frawley's a better 10 than either of them. And I'd love to see young Tector. I've not seen hardly anything of that boy, which is tragic because I watch rugby all the time. And he's not playing any of the games I watch, so that tells me he's not playing. He's playing. I mean, playing for Lansdowne is a lower level of rugby than he should be playing if he's that good. If he was good enough to be playing under 20s for Ireland, he's good enough to be playing provincial rugby at the top level. It's as simple as that.
Just see another comment there coming in from Joe Lyons. Being in an environment with world-class players, learning, playing from them is from a developmental perspective more important than playing with lesser team with players not at the same standard. But I agree with that. But I also was saying, perhaps you've thoughts on this, Brett. But if you're used to playing behind a Rolls Royce the whole time, you know, when I suppose it's as much a character thing as much and a learning experience. You learn more from defeat than you do from winning. Like if would playing behind a not so good team, and I don't want to throw too much shade in Connacht, but look, they've been inconsistent at best this season. Would it basically it also surely would be a learning process for the likes of Prendergast if the pack in front of him is stuck in reverse and the ball is shooting from the scrum half's hands. He has to learn how he has to think that much quicker because there's a Big 12 coming down his way. Surely there's merit in playing. You know, okay, you've kind of said that going to Connacht may not be the best option, but surely there's merit as well in facing a little bit of adversity on the rugby pitch as well in that situation.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think he's got to learn in all of those different environments. You know, throwing him down with the A team down in South Africa is probably going to give him that beaten pack kind of feel to it. But I think he needs time with quality around him as well. And I actually think he'd shock quite a few people. The other area they need to think about when they do send him down, and this is with all kids that you send out on loan, who's looking after them for the next 12 months? Who's the coach? How much game time is he going to get? What's the environment like? What's the gym like? What's the mental skills like? What's the nutritionist? The whole shooting match and the whole thing. The question Leo's got to ask, or is it David Neesford or David Humphreys? Can young Sexton, Mark Sexton, and Pete Wilkins make him a better player? Or there's Jack Nieberg, Leo Cullen, Sean O'Brien, and Tyler Blundell will be his coach next year. Is that a better fit for him? I'm going to be biased and wear blue tinted glasses on this, and I'd say I think I'd stay with Jack Nieberg and Leo. But it's their responsibility now to get the minutes, and it's their responsibility to say, Ross, your time's up, and we're putting all our eggs into the sand basket here, and let's go and let's make him as best player as we can. You know, that's what we have to do.
Sure.
Well, Munster have basically done that with Crowley, haven't they? Now they froze out. They froze out the
Carberry.
They froze Carberry out, and even brought in Ben Healy as towards the end of the last season for the last few games of the last season. So I genuinely think staying at Leinster is where he should be, because like Brett just said, he's going to be playing with top class players all the time, and he has to fight for that place. If he goes and has an easy ride going to play for Connacht, which it won't be, by the way, it'll not be an easy ride by any stretch of the imagination. However, he did learn. He will, if he hasn't learned from those games that Leinster went away and played disastrously, really, in South Africa, where they were on the back foot all the time, and everything he did was on the back foot. So he's obviously will have learned from that, and I genuinely think he needs to be playing next to fucking Gibson Park. So he does. He'll learn more from that in fucking half a season than he would in a full season anyway. Simple as that. Listen, I'm not a coach, but I watch an awful lot of sport, and I see. Look at Bundy Aki, how he plays for Connacht as against how he plays for Ireland. Like, that tells me an awful lot. Bundy Aki has been absolutely outstanding. He's been probably over the last 12 months or the last 18 months Ireland's best, most consistent player. And yet he goes out and he plays very averagely for Connacht every week. He does. I watch all Connacht's games as well, and he's getting a fucking 5 or 6 out of 10 playing for Connacht, and 8 or 9 out of 10 playing for Ireland. There's some very apparent reason for that, in my reckoning, anyway.
Anyway, so speaking of all things Leinster, we'll move on to the last game in the URC, which was that cracker of a game above in the Kingspan on Saturday evening, Ulster versus Leinster. Leinster putting up pretty much not a full strength team, and coming up very much against a full strength Ulster team. A hell of a match, Brett. I suppose, and we're obviously going to get on to the big events this Saturday, but just taken from the view from the results at the end of the match and how it was managed, do you feel that the game was managed well, and is there any players who would have come out with less credit after that performance on Saturday evening?
Yeah, I think there's this problem. I think there's all the backup players played. I just wonder whether they spent the whole week, and even I just heard one of the players mention that they concentrated on Toulouse last week, and if that is the focus for the club, the Ulster match subconsciously probably wasn't a focus. Sorry, it definitely wasn't a focus, and that's very difficult for players to be doing that, where they're prepping for European, they're watching videos of Toulouse, they're running through their game plans of what they're going to do. They've gone with a 2-week preparation, and you're tapped on the shoulder to say, oh yeah, and by the way, you're off to Belfast the weekend to play a game. And it's like your head is all over the place. And I know you can say, well, Brett, they're professional rugby players. Yes, they are, but they're still human beings at the end of the day. There was a good few of the players there that will play on Saturday or will be involved in the 23, and they looked as though their heads were elsewhere. They were against an Ulster first 15. I think who were they missing? Henderson. I'd say that was probably about it. And they were exposed. They were exposed badly, and players that didn't come out of it too well. I'd be worried about the form of Luke McGrath. If Luke McGrath is the backup to Gibson Park, the difference in the two players is beyond belief. And if Gibson Park went on to the match and got a hamstring injury or got concussed or knocked out or whatever in the first opening 5 minutes of the game on Saturday, I think he should just pack up the tent, because with that form, it's not going to happen for him. So
do you not think? Do you not think Cormac Foley did very well?
Sorry, yes. Cormac Foley did really well. I actually think he looked really, really comfortable in the backfield. He looked sharper than Luke. I think he's come out of it quite well, but Luke, if he's the second choice and he's got 19-20 international caps, he didn't play like an international, and that's a concern. That's a concern even for Saturday.
Sure. Just looking, it's been a bit of a trend, and I think Bernard Jackman mentioned it as well, that there's an issue. He feels that there's an issue that those coming off the bench for Leinster are a step down. There's a gap between those who are starting, particularly, I suppose, like my own view is, particularly as regards tight head prop, like there's a gap between, I feel, Furlong and Alalatoa. We've spoken about it amongst ourselves on here previously that, Alalatoa is going to Claremont in the summer. who's coming in as tight head prop, but obviously we have to concentrate on what's happening in the next week. Obviously, Alalato is going to be on the bench as backup to Furlong. But do you feel that there's been is it a management issue really when it comes to switching players on and off? Because we've seen it where they've replaced 2 and 3 players at a time, and all of a sudden, particularly in the scrum, there's a free kick given. It seems it's all technical stuff. The break foot is up too early, or there's an early shove or something like that. Is there a sense that perhaps maybe Leo and Robin McBride are maybe swapping around the players, the front row players, the forwards around the hour mark a little bit too quickly, rather than kind of blending them in, perhaps maybe one at a time, rather than 3 on, 3 off, as we saw on Saturday? The whole Leinster front row was replaced all at once, and it seemed that the scrum seemed to become a mess immediately thereafter.
Yeah, it looks like, and again, I've no inside information here. I'm just looking. It looked like he took that front row off because that front row is going to be the bench at the weekend, and it looked as though they made the decision for freshness reasons. So again, it's another decision made looking at another game that's coming down the road, which that goes into the psyche of players. Of course, it does. But look, to answer your question, I've talked to Birch about this, and he has his views on it. I have a slightly different view. Every single player in the Leinster bench against Northampton is a capped international. So at one point of time, someone said you're good enough to play for your country. And some of them have been involved in World Cups, and some of them have been involved in Six Nations, which is the highest level you can get on an international front. I think Jack Conan's a British Lion, played in 3 test matches. The gap between himself and Doris is very tight, but I do agree with you. The gap between some of the other players is actually quite big, and that's going to happen in all teams. Like the gap between Dupont and Retier, or whoever's going to play on the bench for Toulouse, is going to be absolutely huge as well. And you see what France are like when they played their 2 halfbacks, the 2 sub halfbacks in the Six Nations this year. France looked like they looked a drop of about 50-60% in what they were trying to do, and that's the nature of it. When we're actually we're not blessed, especially in that tight head area. I think Ronan Kelleher's, I don't think there's too much between himself and Dan anyway. I think Dan still shades it for me because he's a bit more mobile around the pitch. But the gaps between our front rows is quite big, and I'd even include Keane on that.
Sure. Just talking about the game itself, do you think that there was an issue about, I suppose, an awful lot? There was a lot of negative press, I suppose, directed at Harry Byrne. That phase in the game. I think we were 10 minutes from the end. There was a penalty awarded, and they went for the line out, which they coughed up. It was basically 3 points. It would have effectively kind of pushed them. It would have finished the game in the favour of Leinster. Do you feel that perhaps there's a slight nagging doubt about game management? And I'm not going to pick we're not going to pick on one particular player, but there's enough rugby IQ in the pitch to decide, well, hang on, let's pull 3 or 4 of the senior guys, the leadership crew in, and make the right decision. But that didn't seem to happen. Do you feel that that's a nagging doubt perhaps for Leinster?
Yeah, look, I looked at that decision, and look, hindsight's a great thing, and I think Leo even mentioned it in the press match, in the aftermatch interview. It becomes an outcome measure. If you kick to the corner, you score a try, you get 8 points in front. Brilliant! What a great decision you've made. You kick to the corner, you throw a crooked throw, and you go, "You fucking idiot! You should have gone." What I think they should have done was read the flow of the game, and the flow of the game at that stage was Ulster didn't have too many possessions in the Leinster half. They attacked from quite far out. Leinster were quite comfortable in defence dealing with them. For me, I didn't think Ulster looked like they were going to score in that last, say, 20-minute mark. Leinster should have read that and said, right, 1 point, let's push it to 4, and let's take the penalty out of it. They're not going to score a try, and that should have been the conversation that was had. I'm also really intrigued by Jacques, who's on the sideline running water, which meant he would have been very, very close to that decision, if not told them the result of that. I just think changing him to water carrier is a very interesting thing to do. And he now might be calling the shots on the sideline because he's closer to the action. He's not behind a glass box. So I think that dynamic is very interesting. It'll be very interesting on Saturday to see how that goes.
Okay, Mike, did you happen to see the game? What
I saw it, yeah. I'm going to, first and foremost, I want to say I think Ulster deserved to win the game. I think they were the better team over the 80 minutes. And I have to say, I thought they were very unfortunate. There was, I think, 3 tries disallowed. And Mike Lowry's second try, I thought there was a clear release of the ball and he picked it up and went over the line and it was given as a penalty the other way. That was one incident. And then he had another one, which was the grounding of the ball. They called it dual grounding or something like that. I've never heard of it before. But anyway, there was both of those tries. Now, either of those tries could have been awarded. Leinster then went on, and I'm going to say about young Foley, by the way, I said a couple of weeks ago, I thought that he was well off the pace when they played in South Africa. However, I thought he had a great game. He ran a brilliant line to take a try from a Hugo Keenan pass, and took it well. And I think Leinster were going for a bonus point. That they had 3 tries scored, and I think that decision was based on that. They wanted that bonus point to get top place in. They needed a bonus point to go ahead of Munster, I think, didn't they? They needed a bonus point.
That's right. Yeah.
I think they won first place. I think first and second place are very important. By the way, they're probably more so to maybe Munster than Leinster. That being said, Munster went away and won all their away matches last season, so you never know, do you? Leinster played okay to a point, but they ran out of ideas, which is concerning. And I agree with you, Luke McGrath. God, he has to be concerned about his future now. And I don't like it's wrong. It's wrong to pick on individual players, really, because it's a team game. But Jack Conan and James Ryan should have been making the decision regarding that penalty or whatever their decision was at the end. They should have been the ones, like the guys with the experience. They should have been the ones saying, lads, we need to fucking take the points here. We're going to be 4 points ahead. The game is done. I'll tell you what I was really almost shocked at Stockdale's try. I genuinely did not think he had that in his locker anymore. He ran the length of the pitch with that, by the way, and he ran away from young Foley, actually. And but I thought he was going to get to the halfway line. That seemed he's going to blow up here now and he'd be caught. But he didn't. He fucking ran away and he put the foot down. And it was good to see, to be honest. I want to see all Irish players play well. I genuinely do. I don't. It's all about the international team for me. And for him to get back to good form, and also Mike Lowry, I think what Murphy has done there in a short space of time, by the way, is absolutely incredible. And for people to even consider not giving him that job permanent is almost scary, because what he has done, like they were absolutely shambolic. Ulster were, and they've come out now. They were a bit fortunate, I will say, to beat Leinster earlier in the season, but they deserve to win that at the weekend. And I think, like for Leinster going forward, it might benefit Leinster, because they're going to say that we can't just go out and not play and expect to win matches now. We have got to be at our fucking best to get the results, and that's the kick up the arse you might need. And if it is one that's going to push them over the line on Saturday, then all the better, you know.
That's the thanks for that, Mike. Brett, just on Richie Murphy, just your thoughts on what Murphy is bringing to Ulster. What do you feel he is? As he's been involved in the Irish setup as a skills and kicking coach under Schmidt, and he moved to be head coach with the under-20s, with dealing with under 20s. What is he bringing to Ulster now as his first top provincial job, as his first as a senior coach? What is the transition? What's the message that he changes from dealing with guys who are basically young enough to be his kids? And I include obviously one of his sons is joining him next season. How does he change the message from dealing with basically effectively his kids to older? And how does that Just give us your insight on that, please.
Look. Firstly, it's great that we have an Irish coach getting an opportunity to coach at a pro level, which we didn't really see that much during Nice 4's time. But look, you got to remember the setups Richie has been in as a coach. He has been with Joe Schmidt. He's been with Cheka. He's been with at different levels, whether it be a development officer role, academy coach, as an assistant coach, like a national team assistant coach is like he's sitting in the room with these world-class players and world-class coaches. What I think Richie has done, and he's a smart operator, he'll have picked what works in those environments. He will look at the cattle he has. He will base the game plan around not what Joe Schmidt was doing 10 years ago with Ireland or Leinster. He will base it on what do I have here? What raw materials do I have? And how do I actually blend that it suits the environment? He's very much into his culture, and he will get players to play for the jersey. He'll bring a passion back to Ulster for those players, even though he's not from Ulster, which will be tough for him to do, but he seems to be able to do it. He will simplify the complexity of the game. That's exactly what he'll do, and players will play for him. Richie's a very likable person. Like Richie's happy to sit down, have a cup of tea with the sub academy player. Like he just wants to go and talk and chat. Even his probing of questions into you feel as though Richie's really interested in you, and he brings that level of humility to the post, and I think the players will really like him, and I think Ulster. I agree. I think what he's done in the last while has been absolutely fantastic. Now, what I would like now is Ulster to back him and say, well, look, Richie, what players do you need here? And let's go and see, can we get those players? Obviously, they're cut with budgets and stuff like that. He's inherited a coaching staff. Again, we don't know how good, bad, or indifferent they are. Does he have to change them? Will they allow him to do that? And I hope the Ulster branch and the Ulster committee, professional games committee, will back him. And David David Humphreys will certainly back him.
You can see there a comment there again from Peter Burke. Yeah. Richie, Rog, and Paul O'Connell, future Ireland coaching tickets.
The only thing, Peter, there is I know all three. There's three big alpha males in that environment. You know, I wouldn't like to be the analyst or the fitness coach. Yeah, you're dealing with some big egos there. So, yeah, I'm not too sure that three would mix. I don't know whether we'd have the balance, but three. Look, these are three Irish coaches, which I'm a huge fan of. Irish coaches doing like coaching Irish people, and I think we've benefited greatly from the foreign coach, and I think they've been absolutely fantastic. But I do think we need to start developing our own coaches, and those three are classic examples of how good Irish coaches actually are.
We also have a boy in England, and now Jerry Flannery's gone to South Africa, and what Felix Jones has just come back from South Africa to England. So there's Irish coaches.
Well, he's got two. We got Irish coaches. We got Mark Smalley or Mark McCall in Saracens, who's won 3 European Cups. We have Rog, who's 2 European Cups. We've got 2 World Cup winners in
La Rochelle,
South Africa.
Not La Rochelle. Bordeaux coach is a Galway man, is he not, or something like that? What's his name? I can't even remember his name.
Noel McNamara.
Yeah.
Oh, there's Noel Mac from thing. He's a fantastic young coach.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of really good ones out there, but for whatever reason, some people that are making these decisions are just going, no, we're not going to look at those guys. We're gonna go far. To be honest, we don't really know what we're getting half the time.
Well, I tell you what, if Ulster had let Richie Murphy slip through the net and not offer him that job, now I don't know whether that was. I don't know what was going on there. Maybe there was a thought process that he was going to go back and take another year of 20s at the international 20s level. Which, if that was the case, fair enough. But for what he turned around in the space, it's actually the individual players. I mean, Mike Lowry being the very obvious, like the difference in the way he's playing in the last 4 or 5 weeks comparative to what he produced the rest of the season is night and day. Jacob Stockdale, another one. The boy that played centre for Ireland and played full back, what's his name? Oh God, Addison.
Yeah.
Different night and day as well. The way he's played towards the end of the season, and that to me
Yeah.
is encouraging, and also the fact that he has worked with three different sets of players, completely different sets of players, almost at 20s level, and had the ultimate success with all three teams. Now, the man has something special, and he's able to get it out of these players. He's able to get the extra percentage that's required out of these players. And like, let's be honest, Mike Lowry's career looked like it was in free fall, like 4 months ago, and now he looks like he could possibly be an option going to South Africa for Ireland at full back if Hugo Keane isn't going. Like, that's the way I see it. Anyway, I genuinely think he's got to be in the conversation just based on his last few games, because he definitely has ability. We all know that. And he's exciting to watch, and he has something. He has something.
Absolutely, Mike. You're right, and that's he's been there before. He'll probably be there again. Now, as we all know, there's a game on this weekend. This is arguably the biggest club game in Northern Hemisphere rugby.
It is
since the Six Nations has rocked up. Leinster versus Toulouse. Brett, you've done a fair bit, and I've seen your bits and pieces on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it these days, as regards, how, the various different machinations of how Leinster could maybe get a bit of change out of Toulouse, the way they set up, the way they play, and perhaps the other way around. Can you just take us through what you feel, where Leinster can make hay potentially against Toulouse, and what Leinster have to be careful of themselves for Saturday's game?
Yeah, how long have we got? It's look, between these two teams. Look, we have they are the two leaders in terms of they've won 9 European Cups. And we all know how great both of them are on their day. I think the last 3 occasions Leinster have beaten these guys by 19, 20 points, I think it was. So the question I have is, in the last 12 months, has the gap between Leinster and Toulouse 20 points, has it narrowed or has it got further away? And we won't know until Saturday afternoon what that answer is. I think Toulouse are playing better than they have 12 months ago. I think if we look back at the game, which I have during the week, Leinster got 28 points when Toulouse were down to 14 men. I think if Toulouse arrive with an ill-disciplined team, give away a lot of penalties, give away a few yellow cards, we have an English referee, I think Leinster will walk this. They'll win by 15, 20 points easy. Because at that level, you can't play for that amount of time. You can't play 20 minutes with 14 men against a quality team like Leinster. But similar to, I think, looking at the way Leinster are now set up, I think we have a bigger focus on stopping teams as opposed to Lancaster's way of beating teams, if that makes sense. So I think the gap will have narrowed. Definitely will have narrowed. I think when you look at the Toulouse coaching staff made an absolute stupid error last year by moving DuPont out to 10 and moving it and pushing everyone out. That was just absolute ridiculous decision. And I think it was just done on a spur of the moment thing. I think when you look back, I think Hugo Manya will have learned from it and say, look, I can't. Your best players have to play in their best position. It's just, that's the game. It's been for 100 odd years. That's the way it's going to be. I think Leinster, different things. I think we're a fitter team than them. I think there's areas where they have world-class players, but we have world-class players too. So if you look at the 2 nines, there's a classic example. Yes, I do think DuPont's a better player than Gibson Park, but I think Gibson Park is a particularly good player too. I think if we look at the 2 hookers or the 4 hookers, we could be looking at the 4 top hookers in the world on the field of play. It's phenomenal talent. That's there. I worry about Leinster's bench. in terms of that loose head, tight head position of what they have coming on and what we have coming on. I think even things like Richie Arnold, I'd imagine will play will be on the bench. He'll come on. That's a serious talent. I don't know whether Capuzzo is in there, whether he will be number 23 for them. If he is, that's another serious talented player coming onto the field. So I think the bench impact is interesting. I think the last 20 minutes of most games, I think Leinster have struggled, especially in cup final games, semi-final games, finals. So I think they've got to wrestle that to see where they're at. But there's a lot of areas you can attack this team, but there's a lot of areas they could cause massive damage. Like they've got games where they're 50 minutes in and there's 2 points between them, and in 5 minutes they'll have scored 3 tries. That's it. The game's over. And they can do that to you. They can definitely do that to you.
Do you feel that? Just the question I was going to bring up, I suppose, really was the kicking game that Toulouse have, or I suppose the general game, the game playing style that they have. Is it more basically, I suppose, akin to the French way of playing, as in the way the national team plays, or is it very much, a different style, a bit like the way Leinster play a particular way, and the Irish team, some would argue, basically flows from that, or there's a few more nuances and bits and pieces with the Irish with Farrell's system, but it's based primarily on the good stuff that Leinster do. Do you feel is Toulouse a little bit like that?
Yeah, I think what the two national team coaches have done is they've actually taken the good parts of both of the teams. So I think Farrell has taken a big chunk of what Ireland do because it's the same players. If you go to the French team, I think there's 12 or 13 in the French squad, all from Toulouse, and they're players who have been in Toulouse since they were like 8, 9, 10 years of age. I think Dupont went there when he was 16 or 17. So there's a lot of times where they are indoctrined into the Toulouse way. In terms of their kicking game, they're a kicking team off 9. Their playmaker is 9. I know they've got an outstanding 10 as well, but most of their kicking, if you do all the data that comes out of it, it is through all 9, and that's what they do. Whereas we kick through, like, our exit kicks are through James Lowe. Though I thought Osborne's been taking a few exit kicks in the last game, which I thought was an interesting one. He's a big left boot. We tend to mix and match a bit, whereas theirs it's Dupont. That's where they go from, and he will. And I saw Pete put up there that, like, we have to try and find a way of stopping Dupont, and it'll be tough. But I think as Irish players, I think Ireland and France games, I think we have stopped him in the past. I think we have come up with a few sneaky ways of trying to stop him. To prevent that second touch play that he's so good at, but you can't keep a good man down for that long. He is an absolute, like, look, he's not even a world-class player. He's one of the best players of the generation,
Sure. Yeah. You hit the nail on the head as regards, you got to me there on that question about basically if you stop, as Peter Burke was saying, if it's a question, if you stop Dupont, you stop Toulouse. But the other thing then as well, and I suppose this is coming back to player selection, would you go? Are we looking at perhaps a 5-3 bench or maybe a 6-2?
Yeah, look, I've listened to all the podcasts this week, and I've heard some really interesting ones. So I've heard, well, we should go with Luke McGrath and Jimmy O'Brien, and we should go with a 6-2. Okay, so just stop and think about that for a minute. And we get an injury to a 10. Who plays 10? And everyone goes, what?
That decision scared me.
Frawley will play 10, and you're going, well, hold on, was Frawley now you're 15? No, Keenan's are 15. Okay, so that rules that out. The problem on a 6-2, your number 23 has got to cover a shed load of positions. Now, that's where I think it's quite interesting that if you picked Cormac Foley, he can cover a multitude of positions, but you can't go Cormac Foley and Jimmy O'Brien, because Jimmy there's still no 10 problem. It's all gone. So Leinster have to have that 10/12, and that's the thing with a 6-2, and that's that's where you've run into all sorts of problems. I I personally would like a 5-3, but I'm probably more of a traditionalist more than anything else. I just think it gives a better balance to what you're trying to do and takes the risk out of it. You're still covering your 3 front row positions, and you have the second row and the back row. I think we're lucky with someone like Ryan Baird. He covers a multitude of positions. So we have all that. But I just think for this game, moving to 6-2 to start accommodating people because they're good fellows, I'm not sure we should go down that route.
Right, and I suppose like you've said that you listened to a few of the podcasts. I think there's also, it's probably come up in some of these whether perhaps there's a case for Will Connors to start at 7 with Josh coming off the bench. You know, Connors being his point of difference being that chop tackle. He puts the big men down early, just stops the momentum, stops the flow, allows Leinster to get on top with the aggressive play, the aggressive offensive defense. You know, that Nienaber and South Africa have there, where they basically go hunting for the ball aggressively, trying to get in the opposition's face. Is very abrasive style. Is that perhaps another you know?
Where's Jack Conan?
Possibility there.
It is, and having someone of Will's, like we saw what he did in the 2 La Rochelle games, he was outstanding. But if you go with that decision, what's the knock-on effect? And these are the questions that are going to keep Leo Cullen awake at night.
Where's Jack Conan?
Well, Jack Conan would also be on the bench as well. So you're end up with 2 back rows.
Definitely
going
6-2 with that juncture, isn't it? If you're going to have Josh van der Fleer and Jack Conan on,
but like even if you go with Ross or Harry Byrne at 23 and Luke McGrath, okay, and you just think about that one, okay, what happens if a winger goes down?
To me, Frawley has to be in the 23. Covers. He's the one that covers him. He covers full back. He's played full back for Ireland in the Six Nations. He covers the positions. He can cover at 10. He's not the fastest to cover on the wing. But that's interesting what you said about young Foley. Prior to the game on Saturday, I would have said no, but God, he was miles ahead of.
It's interesting because Foley came up through all the age grade teams, playing in the centre and playing at fullback.
Yeah,
like he's actually played a lot of rugby at his underage level in around that level at those positions.
I was
a
really
super footballer.
See the line he ran for, like I said earlier, for Hugo Keenan's pass for the try on Saturday. Excellent. And he does look as if he has pace. Lads, we're talking about DuPont. They have every bit as much to worry about with Gibson Park as far as I'm concerned. I think Gibson Park is absolutely a brilliant scrum half. He's a brilliant rugby brain. He has the full package, no question about it for me. And he's right up there with DuPont. If you can keep DuPont quiet, I don't think you should be worrying about that though. I think Leinster need to impose their own game on Toulouse and let them do the worrying. Because Ramos mightn't start, by the way. He mightn't even be in the 23. I mean, if you're talking about Capuazzo being in the 23, Ramos, unless he starts, he's not in the 23 then, is he?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was looking at video footage of Toulouse's training today, and I was just looking at the different bibs they were wearing and who was in what bib. And Blair Kinghorn seemed to be in the starting 15. Ramos wasn't in the bib, and I'm just thinking now. Obviously, it's a snapshot, so you don't know at what stage of the training session it is. But when I looked at the color bibs, DuPont was in the bib, Lentemac, Malia, Lebel, Costas, like they're all the normal 15, and Ramos wasn't. So I'm going to put it out there. I don't think Ramos is in the starting 15.
One thing, by the way, that's a big decision given his goal kicking abilities, because Blair is below average as a goal kicker. Even for Scotland, he was found wanting when he played at 10 and took the kicks goal.
I would be surprised if they do it, because Ramos is very important to the way they play and their phase setup. You know, they do play the 2 playmakers. They do play Entemac and Ramos normally. Blair Kinghorn can't do that. Blair Kinghorn is better in the air. He's quicker than Ramos. He'll cover more ground than Ramos. So, yeah, it's again, that's going to keep them awake at night.
I'm going to go Leinster to win this. Hugo Keenan to me is being back is absolutely enormous. The lines he runs, the pace he has everything. The the way he covers the backfield. Now,
Mhm.
in fairness, James Lowe has taken on the mantle, by the way, in Hugo Keenan's absence, and he's become a better player as a result of Hugo Keenan's absence. So, like as a defensive player, and even Larmour is probably going to get that right wing role. I should imagine he's earned it. If it comes to a toss up between Jimmy O'Brien and Frawley on the bench, it's Frawley all day for me anyway. And I agree with you. Luke McGrath didn't do his chances any good in his performance on Saturday. It might cost him a place in that team. That's 23, to be honest. I don't like it. It shouldn't be about an individual's poor performance. That there's a poor team performance, to be fair. And I was really, really impressed with John Foley, though, and I'm so pleased that he turned around his performances in South Africa on Saturday. He really, really did. Yeah. Everything about his game, and that could be a combination of playing with better players beside you as well, and different players beside you.
Absolutely. Gents, I think we're coming to almost an hour and a half.
Can I just go and ask Joe's question there about Dupont dropping out of the Stade Toulousain's team, 60% drop in performance. They played, was it Stade Francais last week? No, the week before, sorry. Dupont was on the bench. Stade Francais are running second in the top 14. They didn't play him, and they never brought him on. So they left him on the bench for the whole 80 minutes because they actually ended up smashing Stade Francais. They played unbelievably well that day, and Dupont didn't play. Now, I'm not saying that they can get away with winning the Heineken Cup without him. They definitely can't.
Yeah,
he definitely dropped down, but I'm not too sure the drop will be as big as you think. I think he's massively important. He is, as I said, he's a generational world star, but I don't think it'll be a drop of 60%. I think they've got 14 other particularly good players to call upon to get over the line,
Yeah, perhaps that's a point that Toulouse are making, that Dupont isn't everything to them the way he was for France, and I suppose probably just it's a shot across the bows. Brett, what's you going to call it now? I'm going to ask you to call it if you can for Saturday. Well, do you see us bringing home that fifth star?
I do, but I'm not joking. I change my mind every hour. I'm looking at these players, are Toulouse and Leinster, on an analytical front. So I do an awful lot of data work. I do an awful lot of opposition work, and there is points that Leinster can attack Toulouse and cause them huge amount of problems. But they've got to deal with Leinster. It's like if Leinster can play, say, the way they played against La Rochelle in that game, Leinster could blow them off the park. Fitness wise. And that's why I worry about those last 20 minutes, because we should be fitter than this team. Like we have better athletes. I'm not saying we've better rugby players, but we have better athletes. So we can go beyond the 80 minutes against these guys. And I think the people like Mafu and Marchand and Cyril Bay and stuff, they struggle with the pace that Ireland play against them, and they struggle with the way Leinster have played against them. And that's over the last 4 or 5 years. They get blown away very quickly. It's a total different brand than they're used to in the top 14. And I think they do need to worry about what Leinster can do. And we need a big performance. We need a big performance from key players,
Yeah. Mike, you're convinced anyway that Leinster are going to do the job on Saturday?
I am. And it's going to come down to 2 key players for me, Jamison Gibson-Park and fullback Hugo Keenan. I think they're going to be the difference. I genuinely do. I think Gibson-Park is just an amazing player, and what he's done he has become even better in the last year. He's right up there. He's right up there with Dupont, really is. And I know he's not going to get that recognition. He's not like people. Well, the Southern Hemisphere don't give us any recognition anyway, so I wouldn't be too worried about that. But I think make no mistake about it, Toulouse will have every bit as much to worry about from Leinster as vice versa. Now, it's up to Leinster if they're up for it, and I really hope that Ross Byrne has the game of his life. I genuinely hope he has the game of his life, and brings. Listen, it's Irish rugby. It's an Irish rugby team. I don't care. I don't do this provincial bias shite. It's about an Irish team winning a Heineken Cup final. I've been to 3 Heineken Cup finals. I've been to see Leinster win their first one, and I was at Munster's one in 2008, and I was at a Claremont Saracens final, and it's a great occasion, lads. It's a fantastic occasion, and my brother and sister are in Tottenham on Saturday, so.
Well, they won't be the only ones shouting them on. That's shouting on the boys in blue. Listen, we'll wrap it up for this evening, gents. Look, thanks so much for everybody who logged on and threw up a few questions. We didn't get to all of them, but we got through a good few of them, and some quality stuff being asked. Thanks to Mike for tuning in from Scotland. As always, strong opinions and plenty to say. And of course, Brett, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys.
At late notice, your input is
no more
fences as per usual.
No more sitting on the fence for me.
No more sitting. Okay, listen, guys, and thanks to everybody for tuning in this evening. We're on YouTube, and I'm sure you can watch it in playback as well. All right, take care, everybody. Good night.
Good evening.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, bye.
Bye to you again, Brett. All the best, buddy, and see you later.
See you guys.
Take care. Thanks, Brett. Bye-bye.